Welcome to the EarnEase Podcast, where we make money easier to understand and wealth easier to build. In a world where financial decisions can feel complicated, overwhelming, and confusing, this is your place to discover practical strategies for earning more, saving smarter, investing wisely, and building lasting financial freedom. Every episode, we explore the ideas that can change the way you think about money. From personal finance and investing to side hustles, entrepreneurship, multiple income streams, budgeting, money psychology, debt management, and long-term wealth building. Because earning more is only part of the equation. What you do with your money matters. How you manage it matters. How you invest it matters. And the financial habits you build today can shape the opportunities you have tomorrow. Whether you're starting your financial journey, paying off debt, building a business, investing for the future, creating additional income streams, or working toward financial independence, the EarnEase Podcast is here to help you make smarter financial decisions with greater confidence. No hype. No complicated jargon. No unrealistic promises. Just practical money strategies, powerful ideas, and actionable insights designed to help you earn smarter, build wealth, and create more freedom. So get comfortable, clear your mind, and get ready to think differently about your money. This is the EarnEase Podcast. Earn smarter, build wealth, live free. Let's get started.
Right now, there is a doctor out there driving a $250,000 Jaguar who is, mathematically speaking, closer to bankruptcy than the barista handing them their morning coffee.
Yeah, it sounds like a total exaggeration. But the data proves it's just a statistical reality.
It really is. So today we are going to show you the exact math of why that happens and, more importantly, how you ensure it never happens to you.
Exactly. And we have a massive stack of sources to guide us through this whole landscape today.
We really do.
Yeah, we're pulling from foundational personal finance texts, like The Millionaire Next Door and Millionaire Teacher. Plus, we're dissecting modern frameworks like the FIRE movement.
Right, and we'll also be analyzing the Pomeranian Learn library on the mechanics of compounding and looking at these deep data analyses on income progression.
It's a lot of ground to cover, but it's all connected.
It is. So the mission for this depth dive is ambitious, but I think it's entirely practical. We are going to deconstruct the specific psychological traps that keep high-earning people entirely broke.
Which is so common, right?
Yeah, insanely common. We will reveal the step-by-step mathematical blueprint for escaping the traditional 9-to-5 grind. And finally, we'll explore the incredibly rare air of multi-million-dollar wealth, looking at what actually happens to people when they reach the summit.
Because building wealth, it's not about being a genius, it's not about a trust fund, and it is definitely not about hitting the lottery.
Definitely not. It is a mathematical certainty if you just follow specific, learnable behaviors. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Before we can even talk about building wealth, we basically have to completely unlearn what we think wealth actually looks like. And I think the best place to start is the Jaguar paradox.
Oh, yeah, the Jaguar paradox. It just perfectly encapsulates the illusion of modern wealth. This originates from a really specific story in Millionaire Teacher.
Right.
So the author was an expatriate working as a school teacher and a private tutor over in Singapore. And Singapore is crucial to this context because of their vehicle tax structure.
Right, because buying a car there is exorbitantly expensive due to the certificate of entitlement.
Exactly. So buying a luxury car isn't just a luxury car there. It is a monumental financial statement.
It's a massive flex.
Huge flex. So the author gets hired to tutor the son of an American family living in Singapore, and the mother drops the son off to the session in a brand new Jaguar.
Wow.
And in Singapore, factoring in all those taxes and the certificate, that vehicle costs well over $250,000.
That's just wild. And it wasn't just the car, right? The sources note she lived in this massive, sprawling house.
Yeah, she wore an elegant Rolex and completely looked the part of a multimillionaire. She basically had the entire visual aesthetic of wealth completely locked down.
But then we hit the paradox.
Right. After a few weeks of tutoring, she hands the teacher a check for the sessions. And the total is just $150.
Which is nothing compared to the car.
Exactly. So he takes it to the bank, and the check bounces. I mean, the contrast is staggering.
Yeah.
You have someone operating a $250,000 depreciating asset who literally does not have $150 in liquid cash in their checking account.
I always think of this like a Hollywood movie set, you know, like you walk down a street on a studio backlot and you see these magnificent, intricate bank buildings and gorgeous Victorian homes.
Yeah, the facades.
Exactly, the facades. If you walk around to the back, there is literally no building. It is just a flat piece of painted plywood held up by some 2x4s and sandbags.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
Right, because one strong gust of wind, or in this case, one unexpected medical bill or job loss, and the entire magnificent structure just blows right over.
The movie set analogy just captures the structural fragility perfectly. I mean, she was projecting a massive financial footprint, but structurally, there was absolutely nothing behind it.
Nothing at all.
The author actually notes that she had to keep calling him, apologizing, and basically begging him to wait a week to cash these tiny checks until her husband's next paycheck cleared.
So they were living entirely paycheck to paycheck.
Entirely. While projecting immense wealth to everyone around them.
This brings us perfectly to the terminology from Thomas Stanley and William Danko's research in The Millionaire Next Door. They created a framework that categorizes people into two distinct camps based on this exact phenomenon.
Right, the PAWs and UAWs.
Yes, so they call them PAWs and UAWs.
So for anyone listening, the PAW is a prodigious accumulator of wealth, and the UAW is an under-accumulator of wealth.
And the best part is the researchers didn't just guess who fit into which category based on vibes.
No, not at all. They developed a very specific mathematical formula to determine whether you are actually building wealth or just projecting it.
Which is fantastic, because anyone listening right now can pause this and calculate exactly where they stand. So walk us through that formula.
The rule of thumb to calculate your expected net worth is actually surprisingly simple. You just take your current age and you multiply it by your realized pre-tax annual household income.
Okay, simple enough.
But you must exclude any inheritances from that income number, because we are only looking at what you actually generate yourself. Then you just divide that total by 10.
Okay, let's run some numbers to make this concrete for you. Let's say you are 30 years old and you make $60,000 a year.
Okay.
30 times 60,000 is 1.8 million. Divide that by 10, and your expected net worth should be $180,000.
Right, so if that 30-year-old has a net worth of $180,000 or more, they are officially a prodigious accumulator of wealth. They're totally on track.
But let's look at the other end of the spectrum, which is where the data gets genuinely alarming.
Yeah, this is the scary part.
Take a 50-year-old physician making $300,000 a year. 50 times 300,000 is 15 million. Divide by 10, and their expected net worth is $1.5 million.
Which honestly sounds completely reasonable for a 50-year-old doctor.
But I'm guessing the reality doesn't match the formula for most of them.
Often it really doesn't. If that doctor has a net worth of only $500,000, perhaps because they have a massive mortgage, 2 leased luxury cars, and a ton of consumer debt, they are a severe underaccumulator of wealth.
Even with a huge salary.
Exactly. Despite generating $300,000 a year in income, they are just fundamentally failing at the actual mechanics of wealth building.
I want to dig into the psychology of this because it feels counterintuitive, right? If you were making $300,000 a year, shouldn't accumulating wealth be basically effortless?
You would think so, yeah.
Why do so many people with massive incomes fall into this UAW trap? The sources point to a couple of fascinating psychological theories, starting with the better than theory.
Yeah, so the better than theory is deeply rooted in our evolutionary sociology. I mean, we are tribal social creatures, right?
Right.
And we unconsciously measure our survival and success by observing our immediate peers. So our neighbors, our siblings, our coworkers.
It's all relative.
It is. When your income rises, you don't just quietly put the extra money in a vault. There is an intense, socially conditioned drive to demonstrate your new status.
You feel a compulsion to consume in a way that literally proves you are doing better than your peer group.
Exactly. It is keeping up with the Joneses, but the Joneses just keep getting richer and more demanding.
If your neighbor gets a BMW, your primal brain basically tells you that you need a Porsche to maintain your social hierarchy.
And that game just scales infinitely. You can never win. The second psychological driver is the better off theory.
How does that one work?
This one is deeply personal. It often affects individuals who grew up in financial hardship or working class environments and then subsequently land high-income careers later in life.
Right. The sources outline a hypothetical case study here named Teddy Friend.
Yeah, Teddy Friend is just the archetypal UAW driven by this better off theory. So he grew up poor. His parents really struggled, perhaps lived paycheck to paycheck.
And the stress of poverty was a defining feature of his childhood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, as an adult, Teddy becomes highly successful. He makes a massive salary. But because of his childhood trauma surrounding money, he feels this desperate, unrelenting need to prove to himself and to society that he is better off than his parents were.
So he uses his high income as like a blunt instrument to attack his childhood insecurities.
That is exactly what he does. He buys the massive 5-bedroom home in the most exclusive zip code. He joins the ridiculously expensive country club. He buys the luxury SUVs.
Just piling up stuff.
Right. He surrounds himself with the highest possible volume of physical possessions to basically build a fortress against the feeling of poverty.
But the cruel irony is that by building that physical fortress of consumption, he totally destroys his financial fortress.
Exactly. His possessions are astronomically high, but his actual financial independence is zero.
If he loses his job tomorrow, he loses the house, the cars, the club membership.
Yeah.
He has literally chained himself to the necessity of earning a high income just to maintain the facade.
He is entirely dependent on his next paycheck, which means, mathematically, he is functionally no different than his Eversberg.
Even though he's making 10 times their income.
Yep.
Okay, I hear this, and it makes sense on a macro level with big purchases like houses and cars. But the sources also focus heavily on the micro purchases. They talk about these million-dollar choices that UAWs make every single day.
Right.
I have to play devil's advocate here for a second, though. Does skipping a $5 latte or avoiding one nice dinner a month actually move the needle?
I know where you're going with this.
It feels like we are drifting into that incredibly frustrating, totally out-of-touch advice where billionaires tell millennials they can't buy a house because they eat avocado toast.
Yeah, that is a very fair critique. And honestly, the avocado toast argument is so often used just to dismiss real structural economic issues.
Exactly.
However, the mathematics of the million-dollar choices discussed in the sources are not really about the latte itself. They are about illuminating the sheer, horrifying power of opportunity cost.
Right.
When you stretch it over a multi-decade timeline.
Okay, break down the specific example they use for this.
The text actually uses Teddy Friend's parents as the mathematical example here. So they were lifelong smokers. They smoked a combined 3 packs a day for 46 years.
Which is a heavy habit and obviously terrible for their health, but let's look strictly at the economics of it.
Right. In pure cash terms, over those 46 years, the total out-of-pocket cost for those cigarettes was roughly $33,000.
Okay, 33 grand. That is a lot of money. Definitely enough to buy a decent used car or put a down payment on a small house.
Sure.
But it isn't going to make or break a millionaire.
But that is only the cash cost. The million-dollar choice involves the invisible mathematics of what that cash could have been.
Oh, I see.
If Teddy's parents had taken that exact same daily amount of cash, the few dollars a day they spend on cigarettes, and instead of buying tobacco, they simply invested it in a standard broad market index fund.
Tracking the S&P 500 for those 46 years.
Exactly.
Let me guess. Compound interest works its magic.
The compound interest is just staggering. The $33,000 of principal, invested incrementally over 46 years at historical market returns, would have grown to an opportunity cost of over $2 million.
$2 million.
Over $2 million. So when a UAW makes a small, continuous consumption choice, whether it is cigarettes, a daily luxury coffee, or leasing a new car every 3 years instead of buying a used one, they're not just losing the sticker price of the item.
Right.
They're actively vaporizing the future wealth that the cash would have inevitably generated.
That reframes the latte argument completely for me. It isn't that a $5 coffee makes you poor.
No.
It is that the daily habit of consuming your capital instead of deploying your capital costs you literally millions over a lifetime.
The math is unrelenting. Small leaks sink great ships.
Which leads us to perhaps the most fascinating sociological data point in this entire first section. You would assume that the people who are the most educated, the people with the highest standardized test scores and the most rigorous training, would be the most capable of understanding this math.
You'd think they would easily avoid the UAW trap.
Exactly. But the data shows the exact inverse. The high income trap disproportionately ensnares our most respected professions.
Yeah. The research indicates that doctors, lawyers, and dentists are actually twice as likely to be under-accumulators of wealth compared to other professions.
Twice as likely. If you are a neurosurgeon or a corporate litigator, you are mathematically more likely to be terrible at building wealth than an accountant or a middle manager.
It's wild.
Why is the deck stacked against them like that?
It is a brutal combination of a delayed accumulation phase and just intense societal expectations. So think about the timeline of a physician. While an engineer or a marketing professional might graduate college at 22 and immediately start contributing to a 401k, the future physician is just entering medical school.
So the engineer is already letting compound interest work for them, while the medical student is actively taking on massive debt?
Exactly. The medical student spends 4 years accumulating hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans. Then they enter a residency program where they might work 80 hours a week for a very modest salary.
Barely surviving.
Right. They often do not see a significant wealth-generating paycheck until they're in their earlier mid-30s.
Which means they are starting the wealth-building marathon a full decade behind everyone else.
And they are starting it wearing a lead vest of debt.
Right.
That delayed start alone requires them to save at a much higher percentage just to catch up to the engineer.
Right.
But then the second factor hits, which is societal pressure.
The movie set expectations again.
Precisely. Society prescribes a very rigid, highly visual lifestyle for a successful doctor or lawyer. When that doctor finally gets their first real attending physician paycheck at age 34, there is immense psychological pressure to immediately project the status of a doctor.
Because they have sacrificed their entire 20s. They have watched their peers buy houses and take vacations. They feel a deep, understandable sense that they have finally earned the luxury lifestyle.
So instead of aggressively paying down the student loans and funneling money into the market to make up for the lost decade of compounding, they immediately buy the Jaguar and the massive house in the best school district.
They attempt to play the part prescribed to them?
Exactly. They aggressively consume their high income, completely ignoring the underlying mathematics that actually demand they live like residents for another 5 years to fix their balance sheet. That is why they become UAWs.
Okay, so we have thoroughly established the illusion here. We know that projecting wealth is often the exact mechanism that prevents you from acquiring it. We know the math of opportunity cost. But here is the friction point for me. You cannot simply budget your way to multi-million-dollar wealth if you do not have enough income flowing into the system in the first place.
No, you can't.
You cannot save 10% of a minimum wage job and expect to achieve financial independence in your youth. Frugality is a defensive strategy, but we need an offensive strategy. How do we get more money into the machine?
This transition from defense to offense brings us to the concepts of the fast lane versus the slow lane, which are detailed in the Your Rich Ego blueprint.
Okay, leave that out for us.
So the traditional route, which most of us are taught, is the slow lane.
Go to school, get a safe job, contribute to a 401k, and basically pray the market doesn't crash the year you turn 65.
Yeah, the slow lane is predicated on trading your time for a fixed salary, saving 10%, and waiting 40 years.
Yeah.
It is statistically safe, but it will not make you wealthy while you are young enough to actually enjoy the physical vitality of youth.
Right.
The fast lane requires acknowledging a stark reality found in global wealth data. 75% of global wealth creators are entrepreneurs, and another 15% are investors.
That statistic is just mind-blowing. 90% of the people who are actually generating massive wealth are not doing it solely through a traditional W-2 paycheck.
No, they are entirely outside the traditional system. They are scaling their income.
They divorce their income from their time. They build systems, products, or services that generate revenue regardless of how many hours they physically work.
Exactly.
But the word entrepreneur or scaling income can sound incredibly intimidating to someone just starting out. If I tell a listener right now that their goal is to generate $1 million in liquid cash, the human brain just shuts down.
It's too big of a number.
Right. Or if we look at the data point from the sources regarding the top 1% of wealth in India, which is 1.52 crore, it feels like an abstract, mythical number reserved for tech billionaires.
Yeah, it induces paralysis.
But I love how the sources demystify this. They break down the concept of reverse engineering these intimidating goals into what they call millionaire math.
Millionaire math is a vital cognitive shift. You have to stop staring at the peak of the mountain and start calculating the specific number of steps required to reach it.
Let's do the math on the $1 million, because if you stare at $1 million, you'll never start. But it is literally just a math equation.
It is.
To make $1 million, you could find just 9 clients willing to pay you roughly $110,000 for a massive enterprise-level solution.
Or, if enterprise sales is too daunting, which it is for most, you shift the variables. You find 90 clients willing to pay you $11,000 for a highly specialized service.
Or you build a digital product, like a software tool or a comprehensive training program that costs $1,000. And you just have to figure out how to sell it to 1,000 people on the internet.
1,000 people in a global market of billions.
Suddenly, this impossible dream is just a daily execution metric. You wake up and ask, how do I find 2 people today who need my $1,000 product? It turns anxiety into actionable strategy.
It is entirely actionable, yeah. But the market is ruthlessly efficient. It does not hand you $1 million just because you did the math on a whiteboard.
Fair enough.
The market pays you for solving expensive, painful problems. And to solve expensive problems, you must possess high-impact, high-leverage skills.
Which raises the obvious barrier, right? How do you acquire those skills without going back to a university for 4 years, taking on $50,000 in student loan debt, and falling right back into the UAW trap we just talked about?
Well, the blueprint from the sources introduces the 6-month skill sprint. This is a framework for bypassing expensive theoretical degrees through aggressive self-education.
Okay, how does the sprint work?
You dedicate 6 continuous months of intense, unbroken focus to mastering one single high-demand skill that directly correlates to revenue generation.
The sources specifically mention skills like video editing, email marketing, and copywriting, right?
Yes, because all 3 of those skills directly help other businesses make more money. If you can write an email sequence that increases a company's sales by 20%, they will happily pay you thousands of dollars for it. The value proposition is clear and highly measurable.
But it isn't just about watching YouTube tutorials for 6 months. It is about how you execute during that sprint.
Execution is everything. The blueprint dictates operating strictly on the 80-20 rule. This means spending 80% of your allotted working time purely on needle-moving, wealth-generating tasks.
I see so many people fail right here. They decide to start a freelance copywriting business. They spend week 1 designing a logo. They spend week 2 arguing about font choices on their website.
Yeah.
They spend week 3 setting up social media profiles. They feel incredibly busy, but they haven't done a single thing that actually generates wealth.
They were performing the illusion of work. The 80-20 rule strips that away. If you have 10 hours a week to dedicate to your side hustle, 8 of those hours must be spent doing the actual work.
Cold emailing potential clients, writing sample copy, pitching your services.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or fulfilling a contract. You relentlessly focus on the execution that connects you directly to revenue.
I have to inject some realism here, though. Let's say a listener takes this to heart. They pick a skill, say video editing. They put their head down. They endure the 6-month sprint.
Okay.
They execute the 80-20 rule, sending pitches every single day, and nothing happens. Month 4, 0 clients. Month 5, 1 client who pays them $50. It is incredibly demoralizing.
It is brutal.
The gap between effort and reward feels infinite at that point. To explain how to survive this, I want to bring in one of the most powerful concepts from the sources, which is the analogy of the Chinese bamboo tree.
The Chinese bamboo tree is just the perfect botanical mirror for the reality of early-stage wealth building.
I think about building a massive server architecture for a new global website. Before the website ever goes live, before a single user clicks a button, you have to spend months laying miles of fiber optic cable, configuring servers, and writing back-end code.
Right.
To the outside world, you are doing absolutely nothing. There is no website. But without that invisible plumbing, the moment you launch and get traffic, the whole thing crashes. The Chinese bamboo tree works exactly the same way.
It does. When you plant the seed of the Chinese bamboo tree, you have to water it, fertilize it, and ensure it gets sunlight. You do this meticulously for an entire year. And at the end of year 1, there is absolutely 0 visible growth above the soil.
Nothing, just a patch of wet dirt.
You continue the exact same regimen for a 2nd year. Still nothing. You do it for a 3rd year and a 4th year. 4 full years of daily effort, watering a patch of dirt with 0 visible reward, 0 validation that your effort is working.
And the vast majority of people quit during this phase. They assume the seed is dead.
They do. But then comes year 5. In the 5th year, within a miraculous window of just a few weeks, The bamboo tree breaks the surface and explodes, growing up to 90 feet tall.
It seems like overnight success, which is exactly how society views wealthy entrepreneurs. They only see the 90-foot tree. They don't see the 4 years of dirt.
Because for those first 4 years, the tree was not dormant. It was expending all of its energy underground, building a massive, complex, microscopic root system.
It had to build a foundation wide enough and deep enough to physically support a 90-foot structure.
Exactly. If it had tried to grow above ground in year one, it would have toppled over from its own weight instantly.
Which circles right back to the UAWs. The UAWs want the 90-foot tree immediately, so they just buy a plastic one and prop it up in their yard. But the wind blows it over.
That's a great way to put it.
So how does a person practically survive those invisible years? When you are executing the 80-20 rule but your bank account is flat, what is the psychological framework to keep watering the dirt?
It requires a profound shift in how you derive satisfaction. You have to completely divorce your daily actions from the expectation of immediate visible results.
You have to derive your dopamine not from the financial reward, but from the execution of the process itself.
Exactly. You must trust the math and the mechanics over your current emotional state. The entrepreneurs who win are simply the ones who refuse to quit during the invisible years.
They understand they are building the root system, the cold email templates, the technical skills, the resilience that will eventually support the exponential financial growth. You launch the site, the clients hit, the cash starts flowing in, you have officially accelerated your income, you are in the fast lane.
It's a good feeling.
It is. But this brings us to a massive inflection point, because once that high income hits your checking account, you face a critical choice. You can either fall prey to lifestyle inflation, which we know leads straight to the Jaguar paradox and the UAW trap.
Or you can funnel that newly generated cash into the ultimate freedom engine.
This is where we transition from earning money to buying time, exploring the core mathematics of the FIRE movement. FIRE stands for financial independence, retire early.
And the FIRE movement is fascinating because it takes all the traditional retirement advice and basically just breaks it over its knee.
It entirely discards the concept of a 65-year timeline. The movement is predicated on one incredibly simple, ruthlessly efficient equation that dictates exactly how long you have to remain in the workforce.
Right, let's break this equation down ELI 5 style, because this is the math that actually buys your life back.
Yes, please.
The equation calculates the relationship between how long you must work to purchase 1 year of total financial freedom. The formula is the quantity of 1 minus your savings rate divided by your savings rate.
Okay, let's run the variables on that. Let's start with the traditional slow lane advice. Every financial planner tells you to save 10% of your income.
So if you save 10%, you are inherently spending the other 90% to maintain your lifestyle. So the numerator is 90 and the denominator is 10. 90 divided by 10 is 9.
9. What does that number actually represent in the real world?
It represents years of labor. It means that for every 1 year you work, you are only buying yourself a little over 1 month of financial freedom.
Wow.
You have to work for 9 consecutive years just to save enough capital to pay for 1 single year of your current lifestyle.
That math is deeply depressing. If you start working at 22 and work for 36 years, you've only bought 4 years of freedom. You are trapped in the machine until you are nearly 70.
Now let's look at the extreme end of the FIRE practitioners. Instead of 10%, they re-engineer their entire lives to aggressively save 75% of their income.
If they're saving 75%, they're only consuming 25%.
Correct. So 25 divided by 75 is roughly 0.33 or 1/3.
Which means what, practically?
It means they only have to work for 4 months to buy a full year of financial freedom.
That is incredible.
For every year they work, they are buying 3 years of retirement. The math scales exponentially in your favor the higher your savings rate climbs.
This highlights the absolute ironclad rule of the wealthy cash flow model detailed in the sources. The mandate is to live like you are poor.
Right.
And it is crucial to understand that they do not mean this as a punishment or a vow of poverty. They mean it as an aggressive tactical strategy. You must automatically move a minimum of 20% of your income directly into wealth-generating assets before you even see it.
Automation is the key mechanism here. Human willpower is a depleting resource. If the money sits in your checking account, You will eventually find a way to spend it on a nicer apartment or a better car.
Of course you will.
By automating the transfer to an investment account the day you get paid, you remove willpower from the equation. You artificially restrict your cash flow, and human nature adapts. You simply learn to live on the remainder.
What I find most compelling about the FIRE movement is that it isn't a monolith. People hear retire early, and they think of a guy eating rice and beans in a studio apartment forever. But there is an entire spectrum, a menu of financial independence, depending on what kind of life you actually want to live.
Yeah, the community has developed very specific categories. The one you just mentioned is lean FIRE. This is the extreme minimalist approach.
Right.
These individuals achieve independence incredibly fast by permanently keeping their living expenses extremely low. They might move to a tiny home, bike everywhere, and never eat at restaurants. Because their annual expense burn rate is so low, they need a much smaller investment portfolio to sustain them indefinitely.
The opposite of that would be Fat FIRE.
Fat FIRE is the luxury model. These individuals want to retire at 40, but they want to maintain an upper-class lifestyle.
Yeah.
They want the nice house, the international travel, the premium health care.
But they need a massive nest egg.
Exactly. To achieve this, their accumulation phase has to be massive. They typically need portfolios in the $5 to $10 million range, requiring an incredibly high income during their working years.
The extremes are interesting, but the hybrid models are where I think the math gets really creative. Let's talk about Coast FIRE.
Coast FIRE is a brilliant strategy for people who understand the time value of money. Instead of grinding for 20 years, you front-load your investments aggressively in your 20s or early 30s.
So you live like a starting student, save everything, and pack your investment portfolio as full as mathematically possible.
Right. You essentially build a massive snowball at the top of the hill. And once that snowball hits a specific target, you completely stop contributing to your retirement accounts.
You just let it roll.
You just let the snowball roll down the hill, allowing the sheer force of compound interest to do the heavy lifting for the next 30 years.
And because you no longer need to siphon off 40% of your income for savings, your daily life changes instantly.
You only need to earn enough to cover your immediate living expenses. You can quit the stressful corporate law job and take a much lower stress, lower paying job, maybe work at a nonprofit, or become a dive instructor.
Because the pressure of saving for the future has been entirely removed by your past self. I love that. And then there is Barista FIRE, which sounds similar, but it was designed to solve a very specific, terrifying problem for early retirees in the United States.
The problem is healthcare. In the U.S. system, you cannot access Medicare until you are 65 years old.
Right.
If you successfully execute the FIRE math and retire at age 40, you have a 25-year gap where you must pay for your own private health insurance on the open market.
And it is not a small expense.
It is a portfolio-destroying expense. The sources cite a specific estimate that is sobering. A 35-year-old retiring at age 50 could face up to $380,000 in out-of-pocket health care costs before they ever reach Medicare eligibility.
A single medical emergency could vaporize their carefully calculated FIRE number. So how does Barista FIRE solve a $380,000 problem?
It is a strategic labor trade-off. You reach a point where your portfolio can cover your housing and food, but instead of retiring completely, you take a part-time job at a corporation that offers comprehensive health insurance to part-time employees.
Like Starbucks.
Starbucks is the most famous example of this, hence the name Barista FIRE. You trade 15 or 20 hours a week of low-stress labor, specifically to gain access to their employer-sponsored health care plan, neutralizing the multi-$100,000 risk to your portfolio.
It is hacking the corporate benefits system. Another massive hack the sources talk about is geo-arbitrage. Tim Ferriss popularized this heavily. It is the ultimate geographic lever for your savings rate.
Geographic arbitrage is a pure efficiency play on currency and local economies. It involves earning your income in a strong currency or high-wage environment while simultaneously living in a drastically lower-cost environment.
The classic example is the tech worker earning a San Francisco salary while working remotely from a beach in Portugal or a mountain town in Mexico. In San Francisco, $100,000 barely covers rent and basic living expenses.
Your savings rate is near zero.
Exactly. You take that exact same income to Portugal, where rent and food are a fraction of the cost, and instantly, without working a single extra hour or getting a raise, your savings rate skyrockets to 60 or 70%.
You don't even have to leave the country to do this. You can apply domestic geo-arbitrage, moving from a high-tax state like California or New York to a state with zero state income tax, like Texas or Florida.
It instantly recaptures thousands of dollars a year that can be redirected into compounding assets. Okay, so we have hacked the income, we've minimized the expenses, we've moved to a cheaper state, we are stacking cash.
Everything is optimized.
But the ultimate question of the FIRA movement is, how do you actually know when you are done? What is the mathematical finish line where you can safely pull the plug, walk into your boss's office, quit, and know you won't starve to death in 30 years?
The universally accepted benchmark within the movement is the 4% rule.
Let's do a deep dive on this, because this rule is the bedrock of early retirement. Where did it come from?
It originated from a comprehensive study by a financial planner named William Bengen in the 1990s.
Okay.
Bengen analyzed decades of historical stock market and bond market data, including the Great Depression and the stagflation of the 70s. He wanted to find the maximum percentage a retiree could withdraw from their portfolio every single year, adjust that withdrawal for inflation, and guarantee the portfolio would not run out of money over a standard 30-year retirement.
And the magic number he found was 4%.
He found that if you hold a diversified portfolio, typically a mix of stocks and bonds, you can safely withdraw 4% of the initial portfolio value in year one. In year two, you take that initial dollar amount and increase it by the rate of inflation.
And if you follow this rigid discipline, historical data shows a near 100% statistical probability that your portfolio will survive for at least 3 decades.
Exactly. This allows us to reverse engineer our target number. If you know you need to withdraw 4%, the shortcut to find your total portfolio goal is to multiply your annual living expenses by 25.
So if you do the math and realize you need $40,000 a year to live comfortably, you multiply $40,000 by 25. Your target number is $1 million.
Once you hit $1 million, mathematically, you are free.
The sources provide an incredible real-world case study to prove this isn't just theoretical math. They talk about Billy and Akaisha Kaderli.
Yeah, the Kaderlis are pioneers in the early retirement space. They retired in 1991 at the incredibly young age of 38. They had accumulated a portfolio of $500,000.
Which, applying the 4% rule, means they had an annual budget of roughly $20,000 a year.
Exactly. They utilized aggressive geo-arbitrage, traveling and living in low-cost countries across Latin America and Asia to ensure they stayed within that $20,000 limit. They rigidly adhered to the 4% withdrawal rate.
Here's the part that sounds like actual financial magic. They didn't work for 25 years. They constantly withdrew money every single month to pay for their lives.
Right.
But because the underlying principal was invested in the market, the compound growth of their assets outpaced the 4% they were siphoning off.
The math is undeniable. After 25 years of zero employment income and constant withdrawals, their initial $500,000 portfolio had not dwindled. It had actually grown to $1.85 million.
They spent money for a quarter of a century and ended up 3 times richer than when they started. It is the ultimate validation of Bengen's math. But I have to introduce some friction here.
Oh, the critics.
Yeah, I know there are vocal critics of this strategy. Is 4% actually safe forever?
It is the most hotly debated topic in financial independence circles today. The most prominent critique comes from economists like Carsten Jeske. His argument zeroes in on a flaw in applying Bengen's rule to the FIRE movement.
What is the flaw?
Bengen's study was designed for traditional retirees. He tested the success rate over a 30-year horizon, assuming someone retires at 65 and lives to 95. But the FIRE movement is retiring people at 35 or 40.
They are not looking at a 30-year retirement. They are looking at a 50 or 60-year timeline,
which exposes them to entirely different statistical risks.
Yeah.
Over a 60-year period, your exposure to multiple severe market crashes increases exponentially.
So what does Jeske argue?
Jeske argues that if you stretch the timeline that far, a 4% withdrawal rate is far too aggressive and risks portfolio depletion if you hit a bad string of market returns early on.
So what does he suggest instead?
For ultra-early retirees, Jeske and others advocate for a much more conservative withdrawal rate, typically between 3.25% and 3.5%.
Which sounds like a tiny difference, just 0.5%, but mathematically it changes everything about your life plan.
It totally does.
If you drop your withdrawal rate to 3.3%, you can no longer multiply your expenses by 25 to find your target number. You have to multiply them by 30.
It completely shifts the goalposts. If you still need that $40,000 a year to live, you no longer need $1 million. You need $1.2 million.
That extra $200,000 could require 3, 4, or 5 additional years of grinding in the accumulation phase. It delays your freedom significantly, but it buys you absolute ironclad mathematical security.
It's a trade-off.
But there is another massive mechanical hurdle here that we haven't touched on. Let's say you hit the number. You are 40 years old. You have $1 million sitting in your 401k and your traditional IRA. You want to quit. You run right into a concrete wall built by the IRS.
The early withdrawal penalty.
Explain how punishing this is.
The government gave you tax breaks to put that money into those retirement accounts under the strict condition that it is for retirement. If you attempt to withdraw any of that money before you reach the age of 59 and a half, the IRS hits you with a massive 10% penalty on top of the regular income taxes you owe.
If you pull out $30,000 to live on, the government instantly confiscates an extra $4,000 as a punishment.
Yep.
If you do that every year for 20 years, you bleed out tens of thousands of dollars in pure penalties. It will destroy the 4% rule completely. So how on earth do fire practitioners who retire at 40 actually get their hands on their own money?
This is where we have to look at specific, highly technical legal loopholes designed to bypass the age restriction. I'll walk through the mechanics of the 3 most common strategies.
I always think of this like a complex plumbing system. You have a massive tank of water, your pre-tax IRA, but is locked behind a heavy pressure valve. If you try to force it open early, the pipe bursts and you lose 10% of your water to the penalty. You have to use a series of very specific, highly regulated, smaller valves to move the water safely to a bucket you can actually drink from.
Yeah, I mean, that is just a perfectly clear way to visualize it. The most powerful sequence of valves is called the Roth IRA conversion ladder.
Walk us through this step-by-step ELI-5 because it is complex but vital.
Step 1, you leave your job, so your earned income drops to 0. This is crucial because it puts you in the lowest possible tax bracket. Step 2, you take a specific amount of money, let's say $40,000, from your traditional pre-tax IRA, and you roll it over or convert it into a post-tax Roth IRA.
When you do that conversion, you have to pay standard income tax on that $40,000, right?
Yes, it counts as income for that year. But because you have no other job income, you pay very little tax on it. Now, the money's in the Roth IRA. Here's the trick. IRS rules state that any principal amount you convert into a Roth IRA can be withdrawn completely penalty-free and tax-free, but only after it have aged in the account for exactly 5 years.
5 years, so you can't touch it immediately.
Correct. So in year 1 of retirement, you convert $40,000. You can't touch it until year 6. In year 2, you convert another $40,000. You can't touch it until year 7. You do this every single year, building a rolling 5-year ladder of conversions.
But how do you survive those first 5 years of waiting?
You must have a separate taxable breakage account or a massive cash reserve saved up to pay for your living expenses during years 1 through 5. Once year 6 hits, the ladder activates.
The $40,000 you converted in year 1 is now legally available to withdraw, penalty-free.
In year 7, the money from year 2 is available. The ladder provides a continuous penalty-free cash flow all the way to age 59 and a half.
It is brilliant plumbing. What is the second valve?
The Rule of 55. This is a specific provision that applies only to 401k plans, not IRAs. If you leave your job, whether you quit, get fired, or retire, in the calendar year you turn 55 or older, you are legally allowed to withdraw funds from that specific employer's 401k completely penalty-free.
So if you are 54, you grit your teeth and work 1 more year, and you gain access to the vault without the 10% hit.
Exactly. But it only applies to the 401k of the job you just left. You cannot use it to access old 401ks from previous employers unless you rolled them into your current one first.
And the final method?
The final method is the most rigid. It is called the 72T SEPP, which stands for Substantially Equal Periodic Payments. Under IRS Section 72T, you can take penalty-free withdrawals from your IRA at literally any age, even 35.
There has to be a catch.
The catch is the math. You must commit to taking a mathematically calculated equal payment every single year based on IRS life expectancy tables. You cannot change the amount, you cannot stop the payments, and you must continue taking them for at least 5 consecutive years or until you hit age 59 and a half, whichever is longer.
So if you start at age 40, you are locked into this exact withdrawal amount for nearly 20 years. If you need a huge lump sum for a medical emergency in year 3 and you break the chain, what happens?
The IRS retroactively applies the 10% penalty to every single dollar you've withdrawn since you started, plus interest. It is a nuclear option, but if executed perfectly, it provides immediate penalty-free liquidity.
Okay, we have thoroughly mapped the mechanics of escaping the gravity of a 9-to-5. We know how to hack the income, hack the savings rate, and navigate the tax loopholes. Yeah. Having discussed the how, I want to pivot the conversation. I want to map out what that wealth actually feels like as it grows.
Right, because it's not just a flat line.
Exactly. We often treat wealth as a flat landscape. You are either poor, middle class, or rich. But pulling from Nick McGillie's brilliant data analysis, we know that wealth is actually a series of highly distinct levels.
Yeah, Maggiulli used data from the Federal Reserve's survey of consumer finances to create a highly accurate map of American wealth. He broke net worth down into 6 distinct levels using a logarithmic scale, specifically log base 10.
Explain log base 10 simply for us.
It means that every time you move up a level, your net worth doesn't just increase, it multiplies by 10. The distance between the levels grows exponentially as you climb.
Let's lay out these 6 levels so everyone listening can pinpoint their exact coordinates on the map.
Level 1 is the foundation. This represents a household net worth of under $10,000. Roughly 20% of U.S. households reside in level 1.
Many young people starting out or individuals burdened by heavy consumer debt are here.
Then you multiply by 10 to reach level 2. Level 2 encompasses a net worth between $10,000 and $100,000. Another 20% of households are in this tier.
The sources make a very specific point about the strategy in level 2. At this stage, your investment returns mathematically do not matter.
They really do not move the needle. If you have $20,000 invested in the stock market and you have an incredible, historically great year and get a 10% return, you have made $2,000.
That is nice, but $2,000 over 12 months does not change your life.
In level 2, your entire strategic focus must be on education, acquiring high-impact skills, and drastically increasing your primary income engine.
You cannot compound your way out of level 2. You have to earn your way out. Then we hit level 3.
Level 3 is the core of the American middle and upper middle class, a net worth between $100,000 and $1 million. Approximately 40% of households sit within this massive bracket.
In level 4.
Level 4 crosses the millionaire threshold, $1 million to $10 million in net worth. It represents roughly 18% of households.
Finally, the summit.
Levels 5 and 6 represent the ultra-wealthy. Level 5 is $10 million to $100 million, and level 6 is anything over $100 million. Combined, these 2 levels make up the top 2% of the population.
Numbers on a spreadsheet are clinically interesting, but they do not convey how life actually changes. My favorite part of McGillie's analysis is how he translates these raw mathematical thresholds into psychological lifestyle metrics using what he calls the 0.01% rule.
The 0.01% rule is a brilliant heuristic. McGillie suggests that a person can comfortably spend 0.01% of their total accumulated net worth on any given day without feeling any financial friction or anxiety.
And if you run that math over a year, 0.01% times 365 days is roughly 3.7% annually, which perfectly aligns with the conservative FIRE withdrawal rates we just discussed. It is mathematically sound.
It gives you a daily allowance of absolute freedom.
So let's map the experiential freedom. If you are deeply established in level 2, let's say you have a net worth of $50,000. 0.01% of $50,000 is $5 a day. McGillie calls this grocery freedom.
It sounds minor, but it is a massive psychological shift from level 1. Grocery freedom means you can walk into the supermarket, and if you want the organic berries or the premium cut of meat or the expensive artisanal cheese, you just put it in the cart.
You no longer have to rigorously track the price of every item against a rigid calculator. Your net worth buffers the daily fluctuations of food costs.
Exactly. Then you cross the threshold into level 3. You become a millionaire. 0.01% of $1 million is $100 a day. Your portfolio, operating quietly in the background, is literally printing a $100 bill every 24 hours.
This unlocks what he calls restaurant freedom.
Restaurant freedom changes how you socialize and consume. It means you can go out to a nice dinner, and you don't have to scan the menu for the cheapest chicken dish.
If you want to order the steak or share a nice bottle of wine with your partner, you do it entirely guilt-free.
You know, with mathematical certainty that your portfolio just generated the cash to pay for that meal today, The financial stress of casual dining vanishes.
Which is an incredible quality of life upgrade. But then we hit level 4. Let's say you have accumulated $5 million. 0.01% of $5 million is $500 a day. Every single day, you wake up to a fresh $500. This unlocks travel freedom.
Travel freedom fundamentally alters your relationship with geography. When you plan a vacation, you are no longer constrained by red-eye flights or budget hotels. You can upgrade to premium economy or business class.
You can book the 4-star hotel in the city center. You can afford the direct flights and the premium experiences. You can essentially do whatever you want on a standard vacation, short of chartering a private jet.
As the sources point out, the private jet is strictly reserved for the rarefied air of levels 5 and 6. But what I find fascinating is the strategy required to climb this ladder. Do you have to constantly reinvent your financial life every time you level up?
How do you successfully navigate from $100,000 in level 3 up to the millionaire status of level 4?
The transition from level 3 to level 4 is mathematically straightforward, though psychologically difficult to maintain over decades. The strategy is what McGilly simply calls just keep buying.
Buying what exactly?
A highly diversified basket of income-producing assets. Broad market index funds, real estate investment trusts, perhaps some municipal bonds. You do not try to time the market. You do not try to pick the next explosive tech stock.
You just relentlessly, mechanically feed a portion of your income into a highly diversified machine every single month, letting compound interest slowly drag you into level 4.
Diversification builds the wealth. But here is the terrifying data point that completely shocked me. The sources reveal that once people manage to grind their way into level 4, they hit $2 million, maybe $3 million, the elevator suddenly stops.
The statistic is staggering. 64% of people who enter level 4 never escape it. They never reach the $10 million mark of level 5.
Medgerly refers to level 4 as the no man's land of wealth.
I have to ask you, why does this happen? If compound interest is a mathematical certainty, why does the engine stall out for nearly 2/3 of millionaires?
Because the exact mathematical mechanics required to exit level 4 are completely antithetical to the mechanics required to enter it. The strategies that built your wealth will now actively prevent you from scaling it.
Explain that contradiction.
To get into level 4, as we established, you diversify. You spread your risk across thousands of companies using index funds. You play it slow, steady, and incredibly safe. But to get out of level 4, to jump from 3 million to 15 million, diversification will almost never get you there in a single lifetime unless you possess an absolutely astronomical W-2 income. Broad market returns of 8% simply aren't fast enough to cross that massive logarithmic gap before you die.
So what is the alternative? How do the 36% actually break through to level 5?
They have to completely abandon diversifications. They have to concentrate risk. They have to take a massive portion of their accumulated capital and make a highly concentrated, highly leveraged bet on a single outcome.
Give me an example of what that bet looks like in the real world.
It almost always takes the form of direct, illiquid business ownership. You take $1 million of your liquid net worth and you use it to buy a manufacturing company, or you heavily invest as a partner in a massive commercial real estate development, or you put all your equity into a single high-growth startup.
Which is psychologically agonizing.
It is terrifying. Think about the asymmetry of risk. If you are in level 2 and you have $50,000 and you risk it all to start a landscaping business and the business fails, you are at zero. But you are likely young, you can get a job, you can rebuild $50,000 relatively quickly.
But if you are deep in level 4, you have $3 million. You have restaurant freedom. You have travel freedom. You have won the game.
You have total security.
Exactly. And now to reach level 5, the math demands that you take $1 million of your safe, diversified dollars and place it on a highly concentrated, high-risk bet.
If that business fails, you have lost 1/3 of your life's work. It violates every primal instinct of wealth preservation. You have so much more to lose.
Consequently, the vast majority of people in level 4, behaving entirely rationally, choose to take their foot off the gas. They protect what they have, they refuse to concentrate risk, and they stay comfortably in level 4 forever.
Which is completely understandable. But it also serves as the perfect transition to the final phase of our deep dive.
We have spent the last hour mapping the ascent. We have outlined the fast lane, the savings math, and the ladder of wealth. But gravity is always pulling back. What are the specific forces that actively destroy this hard-earned compounding?
The Palmyra Learn Library details the precise mathematics of drag. the forces that constantly erode your wealth. The most insidious, because it is invisible, is inflation.
We hear the word inflation constantly on the news, but how does it physically drag on a compounding portfolio?
Is the difference between nominal returns and real returns. When we say the stock market averages an 8% return over time, that is a nominal return. The number on your screen goes up by 8%.
But you must subtract the rate of inflation to find your real return, which is the actual increase in your purchasing power.
So if the market gives you 8%, but inflation is running at an average of 3%.
Your real return is only 5%. That 3% difference completely alters the mathematics over a multi-decade timeline. We just talked about the goal of hitting $1 million. But if you model $1 million compounding over the next 30 years, you have to account for the fact that in 30 years, because of inflation, that $1 million will only possess the purchasing power of roughly $400,000 to $500,000 today.
It is like trying to run up a down escalator.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't run fast enough, you are actually going backward, even though your legs are moving.
Mm-hmm.
You have to aggressively overaccumulate capital just to tread water against the drag of inflation.
And that is just the natural drag. The second force is one that people actively choose, and it is catastrophic. It is negative compounding.
Oh, this one hurts.
I want to passionately warn anyone listening about this. We just spent all this time marveling at how the miracle of compound interest can turn $33,000 of cigarette money into $2 million. It is a powerful engine, but that exact same mathematical engine works in reverse, and it works against you with terrifying speed when you carry high-interest consumer debt.
The math does not care who it is working for.
If you are carrying a balance on a credit card at 18% or 22% interest, you are literally funding the bank's FIRE movement. You are paying for the bank executive's travel freedom.
It's true. Negative
compounding is a wealth-destroying engine that will vaporize your net worth significantly faster than the stock market can build it. You cannot invest your way out of 18% debt. If you are earning 8% in the market and paying 18% to Visa, you are bleeding out 10% of your wealth every year.
Yeah.
You must destroy the debt before you can build the wealth.
Mathematically, paying off an 18% credit card is identical to finding a risk-free investment that guarantees an 18% return. It is the best financial move you can make. The third mathematical drag, which we touched on briefly during the 4% rule debate, is sequence of returns risk.
I picture sequence of returns risk like a leaky bucket during a drought.
Yeah.
If your bucket is full of water, your retirement portfolio, and a bear market hits, it's like a hole gets punched in the bottom, water starts leaking out.
Right.
If you are still working, you can patch the hole with new income or just wait for the rain, a bull market, to refill it. But if you are retired, you are relying on that bucket for your daily drinking water. You have to actively scoop water out of a bucket that is already leaking.
That analogy perfectly captures the danger of early withdrawals during a downturn. Let's run a mathematical simulation to show how this permanently breaks a portfolio.
Walk us through it.
Imagine two individuals, Alice and Bob. Both retire with exactly $1 million. Both plan to withdraw $50,000 a year. Over their entire 30-year retirement, both will experience the exact same average market return of, say, 7%. The only difference is the sequence of those returns.
The order in which the good and bad years happen.
Exactly. Alice retires into a bull market. In her first year, the market goes up 10%. Her million grows to 1.1 million. Then she withdraws her 50,000. Her portfolio is at 1.05 million. She is richer than when she started. Her compounding engine is perfectly intact.
Now let's look at Bob. Bob retires into a massive recession.
In Bob's first year, the market crashes 20%. His $1 million portfolio violently drops to $800,000. But Bob still needs to buy groceries and pay his mortgage. He has to withdraw his $50,000.
So he pulls $50,000 out of a portfolio that is already down to $800,000.
He is down to $750,000 by the end of year one. He has lost 25% of his wealth immediately. Here's why the bucket is permanently broken. To get that $50,000, Bob had to sell a massive number of shares at rock bottom, depressed prices.
Those shares are gone forever.
When the market eventually recovers in year 3 or 4, Bob has significantly fewer shares to participate in the recovery. Even though his average return over 30 years will mathematically be the same as Alice's, that early, deep crater permanently crippled the portfolio's ability to compound. Alice dies wealthy. Bob runs out of money in year 20. That is sequence of returns risk.
I want to push back on this entire framework for a moment. We are sitting here debating the nuances of whether a doctor can retire at 40, modeling these 30-year compounding timelines. Are we just looking at a highlight reel?
What do you...
Is this entire philosophy tainted by survivorship bias? It feels like we are reading a playbook written entirely by lottery winners, ignoring everyone who bought a ticket and lost.
That is the most rigorous intellectual critique you can level against this entire body of literature. And it is famously articulated by Nassim Nicholas Taleb in his critique of The Millionaire Next Door. Taleb points out a massive fatal blind spot in how these rules of wealth are derived.
Explain Taleb's critique. How does survivorship bias distort the data?
The original researchers went out and surveyed thousands of people who are currently millionaires. They looked at the habits of these winners. They lived frugally. They bought used cars. They invested heavily in local real estate or index funds. And they concluded, if you do these things, you will become a millionaire.
Which sounds completely logical.
It is logical, but it ignores the denominator. The researchers never interviewed the people who did the exact same things, who saved aggressively, lived frugally, and invested heavily, but still went bankrupt.
How does someone follow the Paul rules perfectly and still go broke?
Macroeconomic timing and sheer, unadulterated bad luck. What about the aggressive accumulator who followed every rule but happened to put all their savings into the market in 1929, right before the Great Depression, wiped out an entire generation of wealth?
Or the person who invested heavily in local commercial real estate in 2007, right before the global financial crisis annihilated their equity.
So you could be the perfect prodigious accumulator of wealth, execute the blueprint flawlessly, and still have your financial life destroyed because of the historical decade you happen to be born into.
Wow.
Yes. Taleb's brilliant point is that luck, specifically the timing of economic cycles, plays a massive, entirely unquantifiable role in the outcome. The wealthy survivors attribute their success entirely to their frugal habits as discipline, conveniently ignoring the fact that they were lucky enough to ride a massive 40-year bull market. We cannot ignore the role of chance in wealth creation.
That is an incredibly sobering reality check. But moving beyond the uncontrollable math of the market, the sources also dedicate significant time to the controllable psychological destroyers of wealth, the forces within our own minds. And the most prominent one is ego. Nick Maggiulli has this piercing quote, "Ego is the most expensive thing some people own."
We see the catastrophic cost of ego most clearly with individuals who successfully manage to break into level 5. We talked about how you have to concentrate risk to get there. Let's say an entrepreneur takes that massive risk, starts a tech company, and against all odds, it pays off. The company goes public or gets acquired, and suddenly they're worth $30 million.
They have achieved generational wealth. The game is over.
At that moment, the smart mathematical wealth preservation move is to immediately take ships off the table, sell a massive chunk of your equity, diversify those millions into broad market index funds, and lock in level 4 or level 5 security for the rest of your life.
But the ego steps in and prevents that.
The ego screams at them. The ego says, I am a singular genius. I saw the market clearly when everyone else was blind. I beat the odds once, which means I am invincible. I am not cashing out at $30 million. I am taking this company to $1 billion.
They refuse to let go of the concentrated risk that got them there.
They refuse to diversify. And then the inevitable happens. The market cycle turns. A new competitor disrupts their technology. The company's valuation plummets. Because they refuse to diversify, they ride their concentrated bet all the way back down to zero.
The supreme irony is that the exact ego required to build the wealth, the sheer irrational confidence to concentrate risk in the first place, is the exact mechanism that eventually destroys it.
It is a Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
The final wealth destroyer is intergenerational. It explores how wealth literally rots over time when passed down. The sociological term the sources use is economic outpatient care, or EOC.
EOC is the academic mechanism behind the old proverb, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. It describes the phenomenon where highly affluent parents continually, and often with the best intentions, subsidize the lifestyle of their adult children.
They buy the adult child's first house. They pay for the grandchildren's elite private schools. They provide a continuous stream of gifts to maintain a certain standard of living.
The data on the long-term effects of EOC is devastating. Adult children who receive substantial economic outpatient care from their parents have, on average, 98% of the income of their peer group who do not receive handouts.
They earn basically the same amount on their own. But those receiving EOC only possess 57% of the net worth of their independent peers.
How does giving someone free money result in them having half the net worth?
Because the continuous influx of EOC creates a profound structural false sense of security.
If you know subconsciously that mom and dad are always going to bail you out if you lose your job, or that they will cover the massive down payment on your house, you have absolutely zero psychological incentive to become a prodigious accumulator of wealth yourself.
You adopt the massive inflated lifestyle of a UAW, but you never build the underlying root system of the bamboo tree.
You are all leaves and no roots. And when the parents eventually pass away and the EOC lifeline is severed, the inherited wealth is almost instantaneously consumed by the massive lifestyle footprint the adult child has built.
And even if the wealth isn't consumed through sheer recklessness, the sources highlight how it is destroyed through simple mathematical dilution over generations.
I call this the lake house example.
The lake house example perfectly illustrates the sheer speed of dilution.
Imagine a highly successful level 5 patriarch. He builds a fortune and uses a fraction of it to buy a massive, gorgeous family lake house on premium real estate. He passes away and leaves the property equally to his 4 children. Those 4 children use it for a while, but then they pass away, leaving it to their children, the 16 grandchildren.
The asset is now divided 16 ways.
Fast forward one more generation. You have great-grandchildren sitting in a lawyer's office, and they're handed their grand inheritance, a completely meaningless 1/64th fractional share of an aging lake house.
None of these 64 distant cousins can agree on how to use it, who pays the property taxes, or who fixes the roof. The asset is entirely paralyzed. The original wealth divides exponentially faster than it can compound until it essentially evaporates into administrative dust and legal fees.
It serves as a stark reminder. Earning and compounding wealth is one specific skill set, but preserving that wealth and successfully transferring the values and discipline required to maintain it to the next generation is an entirely different and arguably much more difficult discipline.
We have covered an incredible, expansive landscape today. We have examined the visual illusion of the Singapore Jaguar and the underlying reality of the UAW trap.
We have mapped the offensive strategy of the fast lane and the invisible years of the bamboo tree. We broke down the extreme mathematics of the FIRE movement, the distinct levels of the Maguli wealth ladder, and finally, the gravitational forces from inflation to ego that constantly try to drag you back down.
If there's a core through line to all of this data, it is empowerment. True wealth is not a mystery reserved for a secret lucky club. It is the cumulative result of small, highly consistent mathematical actions taken over a long horizon.
It is about earning aggressively by building high-impact skills, defending that income ruthlessly against lifestyle creep, and scaling it through the relentless cold arithmetic of compound interest. But before we close, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. It is something we haven't explicitly tackled, but it hovers silently over every single formula and strategy we've discussed today.
What is the thought?
We have spent this entire deep dive talking about how to turn your time into money, how to trade your present hours, how to sacrifice your current lifestyle to secure your future decades. We have glorified the accumulation phase. But consider this. At what specific point on your personal wealth ladder does the math flip?
When do you pivot from defense to offense?
Exactly. When do you start aggressively using your accumulated money to buy back your time and your physical health? Because the ultimate tragedy of the human experience isn't dying with an empty bank account. The ultimate tragedy is arriving at the very end of your life, sitting on a pile of millions of dollars, but being completely bankrupt of the time, the youth, and the physical vitality required to actually enjoy it. Don't be the financial peacock so obsessed with accumulating beautiful feathers that you completely forget how to fly.
That's powerful.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mechanics of wealth. The math is sitting right in front of you. Start looking at your own numbers and start building your blueprint today.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of the EarnEase Podcast. Remember, building wealth isn't about finding one perfect strategy or making one life-changing financial decision. It's about the choices you make consistently over time. Earn more. Spend intentionally. Save consistently. Invest intelligently. Build valuable assets. And create financial systems that give your money the opportunity to grow. If today's episode gave you a new idea, a different perspective, or a strategy you can use, don't just listen to it. Put it into action. Follow the EarnEase Podcast so you never miss a new episode, and share this conversation with someone who is working toward a stronger financial future. Because financial freedom isn't simply about having more money. It's about having more choices, more security, more time, and more control over your life. Your financial future isn't built someday. It's built by what you do today. So keep learning, keep earning, keep investing, and keep moving toward the life you want to create. This is the EarnEase Podcast. Earn smarter, build wealth, live free. Until next time, keep making your money work for you.